Hello everyone, Stjepan here. With this video I'm going to start a series about the old masters to break up the videos on Bobby Fischer a bit. And in this series I will cover the games of the players who were active in the 19th century and in the first part of the 20th century. I'm going to start the series with a historically very important game played between Capablanca and Marshall, which adds up to the theoretical video I made on the Marshall attack, because this is the first time the Marshall attack was ever played. The game was played in 1918 in New York, and it was supposed to be an 8-player round-robin tournament, mostly exhibitional. It wasn't an official tournament for the World Championship or something. But one of the players dropped out, so it was a 7-player round-robin. And the only major thing that happened in this event was this game I'm about to show you. For this game, Frank James Marshall prepared his signature Marshall attack, what is now known as the Marshall attack in the Royal Lopez. It's said that he prepared it for 10 years to play it, not against Capablanca, but against somebody. And when he finally played it against Capablanca in this game, it didn't go that well. Capablanca was, of course, at the time, probably the strongest player in the world, even though Emmanuel Lasker was still the world champion. But he just kept declining to face Capablanca in a match, and when he finally did in 1921, he lost the title. So Capablanca was arguably the best player of the time. Marshall was good, he was in the world's top, but nowhere near Capablanca, actually. And in this game, Capablanca had the white pieces. He opened with pawn to e4. We have e5, knight to f3, knight to c6, bishop to b5, the Royal Lopez. And from here on, of course, both players could choose various lines, but they enter what is now called the Marshall attack, or the Marshall gambit. After a6, bishop to a4, knight to f6, white castles, bishop to e7, rook to e1, b5 and bishop to b3. From this position on, the most common move for black is of course d6, entering the closed Royal Lopez, and after c3, castles, pawn to h3, black either goes for the Chigorin, the Breyer, the Karpov, and various other closed Royal Lopez lines. But after the move Marshall played, he played castles. The options are still open. Of course, after c3 by white, he could still play d6 and enter the closed Royal Lopez lines, but this is the move he prepared. At the time, it was a complete novelty, and this was the first time it was played. He went for d5, the Marshall attack, and this is, of course, a pawn sacrifice, which Capablanca must have thought was a bit dubious, and perhaps he didn't think that Marshall prepared it for so long, but Marshall knew what he was doing. So after e takes d5, of course accepting the pawn, knight takes d5, now white is able to win e5 and the pawn is undefended. So knight takes e5, and after rook takes e5 you can see that white has a central pawn, in exchange for a bit worse development. And you can see that white's queen side is completely undeveloped, the bishop on b3 is inactive, and black is very fast to create an attack. Now, from this move on move 11, today there is only one move played, pretty much, and that's c6. And c6 is defending the knight, supporting it, because it's now attacked twice by the bishop and by the rook. And you actually don't want to move this knight with black, because it's preventing this bishop from attacking f7. So c6 is a double-purpose move, preventing the bishop from activating and defending the knight. Another move instead of c6, which used to be played, is bishop to b7 and activating the bishop on the long diagonal. But by far the best move in this position is c6. And Marshall went for the third option after rook takes e5. He played knight to f6, and this is the move he had prepared earlier on. Now this move is not good for several reasons. First of all, this bishop is now a monster on the diagonal. That's the first thing. Secondly, you moved your knight twice, and what he could have done by defending it would actually gain a tempo instead of losing a tempo. And the third thing is that you are blocking the scope of your queen. In the normal Marshall lines, after c6, white plays d4, and after bishop to d6 chasing the rook away, the rook goes to e1, and queen to h4, you can see that the queen is much more active here than if the knight was on f6. So now the queen is inactive in the variation Marshall played, and the bishop is active. So after knight to f6 you can see the difference, that the scope of the queen is reduced and the scope of the bishop is increased. So knight to f6 is a definite mistake, and this now doesn't give as much compensation to black for the lost pawn. Capablanca continued with rook to e1, this is the best move, and now bishop to d6, activating the bishop, h3, And now knight to g4. And now this move is in an inaccuracy. He should have played something better. The best move was to place the bishop on b7 and activate it to attack g2. And knight to g4 is just a waste of tempo. Of course, white should never take the knight. If he takes with with h takes g4, then queen to h4, rook to e4, he would have to give his king an escape square, and after queen h2 check, king f1, queen check, king e2. You can see that white is in a lot of trouble for not that much. He won a piece, but he will lose so much material that the position is winning for black. Okay, white still has a fighting chance, but I mean, black is better. So after knight to g4, which can't be taken, but if it's not taken, it's a mistake, Capablanca simply played queen to f3, activating his queen, and he now has a great advantage. And after this, queen to h4 by Marshall, d4, opening up the bishop, knight takes f2. Now this is the only active move black has, and if he tries something else, then he just stands no chance. Of course, now the knight was hanging, so he either has to move it or take on f2. The point of taking on f2 is that the queen really can't take the knight. Capablanca played rook to e2, attacking it. If after knight takes f2, queen takes f2, then bishop h2 check, king to f1, and now bishop to g3, attacking both the queen and the rook, and in worst case, black is going to get 2 pieces for the rook. So after this, queen to d2, and now bishop takes h3 actually works. G takes is the best move, and after takes, queen check, queen to g2, queen takes g2, king takes g2, and now the rook is dropping. So black has 2 pawns and the rook for 2 pieces, so it's pretty much equal. White is supposed to have an advantage, but I think this is really playable for black. So after knight takes f2, Capablanca must have calculated all of this, and he didn't want to go for this line, and he played the best move, rook to e2, and now white has an edge. After this, bishop to g4, attacking the queen and the rook. This is actually a mistake because it can be taken. It does give black some activity, but there were better moves. I mean, instead of that, he should have played bishop takes h3, perhaps trying to get something going. And after knight takes, he would have a lot of checks on the king. However, after bishop to g4, he still stands the same chance, but he's worse, and his gambit didn't work. c6 should have been played instead of knight to f6. Of course, now Capablanca takes, h takes g4. Now the point of that is bishop to h2 check, king to f1, bishop to g3. Now rook takes, he exchanges some pieces, queen to h1 check. Now the white king is going for a walk, but it's not that dangerous for it, and I'm sure Marshall must have known that his position is busted by now, and to prepare a line for 10 years and to fail this miserably must be devastating. What I don't understand is how he didn't calculate c6 instead of knight to f6. It's a very logical move, and okay, it's easy to speak about the move now that you know the theory, but it just seems more obvious than knight to f6. King to e2, he has to escape, bishop takes f2, bishop to d2, bishop h4, queen to h3, he's trying to exchange pieces, rook a to e8 check, king to d3, and the king does look unsafe, but ultimately it will hide on c2 and black can't do anything. King to c2, bishop to f2, queen to f3, queen to g1, he has to avoid the exchange, because if the queens get exchanged, it's just over immediately. Bishop to d5, c5, trying to open up the position, but anything black tries now is too slow, and white has too much material for the time that black is trying to get. So now d takes c5, bishop takes c5, b4, bishop to d6, and you can now see already that white's queenside pawn majority is going to be pretty dangerous. And now a4, a5, a takes b5, a takes b4, rook to a6, attacking the bishop, b takes c3, knight takes c3, bishop to b4, and Marshall is now initiating an exchange, which I really don't understand. And now it's too late already. Whatever black does, he has a rook for 2 pieces, but if you try to compare those pieces, it's this knight and this bishop against this rook, and this rook is doing absolutely nothing. So black is almost equal on material, he's only 1 point down, but he doesn't stand a practical chance because his piece is so inactive, and the bishop is controlling the entire board. It's on the most active diagonal, 2 diagonals on the board, and it's on the best possible square. so the rook has no chance. Now from this position, b6, Capablanca just pushes on. Bishop takes c3, bishop takes c3, h6, making some luft, but it's futile. There's nothing black can do now. b7, threatening to queen, rook to e3, and now a finishing tactic by Capablanca, bishop takes f7. Of course, if rook takes bishop, then b8 queening with check, and if he doesn't, then just queening and winning the game. So this is just completely busted, and Marshall actually resigned in this position. And this game is very instructive because it's always... I'm not sure that many openings have the first game when they were played, at least not such popular openings as the Marshall attack, and that's why I think this game is very significant historically, and it should be studied by anybody who wants to play the Marshall attack. And you can actually learn a lot from Marshall's mistakes in this game, and you can actually improve on Capablanca's defense as well. So it's a great game if you want to study this opening, and at the moment the Marshall is one of the most popular lines in the Roy Lopez, so it wouldn't hurt knowing it. I have made a separate video on the theory of the Marshall. If you would like to check it out, you can find the link in the description below. And thanks very much for watching. I hope you liked this instructive game by the old masters. Stay tuned for more chess by the masters, that being Tal, Fischer and the other players from the mid-20th century. And for more games by the old masters, which are Marshall, Capablanca, and the other ones, Lasker, and all the old guys. Thanks very much. Thanks for watching. Bye.